Chuck, who we got on the line here?
It's Matthew Postins.
Hey, is it really? Okay, good enough. Well, then we'll put him on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us now from Rattle and Hum Sports, Post and Postcards, the Tyler Morning Telegraph. Who else are you writing for these days?
Let's see, what else? Roadtripsports.com is
Roadtripsports.com. What is that?
It's a site that a couple of friends of mine and I are working on that we hope to launch fully next year. That it mainly is designed to help college football fans plan road trips. I mean,
I like that.
Millions of fans go to college football games every year. We're going to have some content related, just to football games, but a lot of what we're going to be doing is geared toward helping college football fans plan their road trips, which places to go to, what things to see. We actually put out a yearbook this year that was more of a preview magazine, and next year our yearbook is probably going to be about 500 pages, and it's going to include every team in college football.
Wow. Okay, by the way, this is Matthew Postins. How you doing, Matthew?
I'm okay, and if you want my opinion on Johnny Manziel, I think he's a great player. I think if you're a voter and you're going to vote for the best player in college football, he's probably the guy you vote for. I heard the guy talking about Manti Te'o a little bit ago, and while certainly Manti has had a very trying year personally, I don't think that should diminish the fact that he's probably the best defensive player in football. He's going to win 3 or 4 of the defensive awards this year.
Sure.
If you're going to give a Heisman to a defensive player, he's the guy to give it to, no doubt.
Okay. I still think Johnny Manziel is a hands-down best player in college football this year, though.
I do, too. I just think it's it's interesting to see how it's worked. It kind of worked the way it worked with RG3 last year. It kind of happened very late in the year.
Yep.
RG3 had that big game against Oklahoma, and that kind of woke everybody up to what he was about. And Manziel had the game against Alabama, kind of did the same thing. So, I think Manziel will probably win it. I think it'd actually be more likely of Colin Clymer to win it just because he's a senior and people are used to voting for seniors and juniors for that award.
Okay. All right. This is a lot more fun than talking about the Cowboys. I just want to throw that out there. But being that you're here to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, what did you take away from the loss to the Washington Redskins on Thanksgiving Day?
Well, I took away, pretty much what we've been talking about all year is that this is a very inconsistent football team. They were beat up. They had a lot of guys missing up front in the offensive line. They lost Bruce Carter during that game. They got a dozen guys on injured reserve right now. This is just not a consistent football team. They're talented. They're just not consistent. And when you consider that they've only scored 3 points in the first half of their last 2 games, I have to wonder, having watched and been around pro football long enough, I have to wonder if, to a certain degree, some of the players have checked out on what the Cowboys are trying to do this year.
Do you think so? The way they've battled back in that ball game, that they're starting to quit on Jason Garrett?
Well, I don't know. They came back in the second half and they played well against the Browns. They did the same thing against the Redskins. But I think the thing that you come back to is, why does it take being down 13-0? Why does it take being down 28-3 for the light switch to come on for this football team? To finally get back in the football game. It's been that way all year. This team has started slow in practically every game it's been in, and it's difficult to ascertain if it's coaching, if it's execution, or it's a combination of the two. But these guys know what is said about them every week. These guys know how well or how poorly they're playing. They know they're inconsistent, and you just kind of have to wonder at this point if some of these guys are looking more toward next year than they are the final 5 games.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I can't imagine the guys on that offensive line could be looking beyond tomorrow, because they all ought to be out on the street. Seriously.
I wrote a piece this morning, and one of the things I hit on was the offensive line, and I think the only guy that really has the talent that's worth keeping, if you're going to make changes, is Tyron Smith, the first-round pick from a year ago. I think he's talented enough and young enough to the point where I think he could become a type-flight tackle. You got to remember, when he came out of college, he was 20 years old.
Right.
So I mean, he's still at the point where he would actually be a senior in college right now instead of a second-year tackle in the NFL. So as far as the rest of the guys go, I don't think any of those guys are so talented that you can't find a better player either through the draft or via free agency. And I can't imagine that at the end of this season, the Cowboys aren't going to look at that position group and say, we have to sell out like we did with the cornerback position this year and find guys that can upgrade that position.
If they could find them at a garbage dump and be better than what they've had this year. It's just been brutal. The one thing I did find interesting was that Jeremy Parnell actually held his own at tackle against the Redskins. He did a good job.
You know, he did. He was shaky to start with, and frankly the whole line was shaky to start with. But once they got into that pass protection mode, especially in the second half, you could see how athletic this guy is. I actually talked to this guy about a month ago for a feature story. He's a converted basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
He stopped playing football in the 8th grade and concentrated on basketball. He's actually been all over the world playing basketball in high school. Played at Ole Miss on a basketball scholarship. In his senior year, Houston Nutt came and tapped him on the shoulder and said, when you're done playing basketball, you come see me. And he played a few games for Ole Miss on their defensive line. The Saints saw enough out of him at a pro day to sign him as an undrafted free agent. And that year he got a Super Bowl ring. He was on the practice squad when the Saints won the Super Bowl. So this guy's already got a ring.
I'll add part of the story to that is that Kelly Hitchcock here in Tyler was the guy that got him ready for his pro day.
Yeah, he talked about that when I talked to him last month. He's one of those guys who's bounced around to a lot of different positions, bounced around to a couple of different teams. But the Cowboys think very highly of him. They think that his athleticism will eventually translate into something where he could be a competent NFL left tackle or right tackle. I think he's probably better on the right side than he is on the left-hand side. But they've extended him for 3 years. He's actually got a 4-year contract right now. So they have committed to him as a developmental player, a guy who's supposed to be a backup right now, but he played decent against Washington. He was overmatched against Cleveland when he had to come in for Tyron Smith late in the game, but he definitely improved in the short week and showed some flashes of what the Cowboys like about him.
All right, not only does Jerry Jones believe the Cowboys still have a chance to make the playoffs, now Stephen Jones says they still have a chance to make the playoffs. This team doesn't have a chance to make the playoffs, does it?
Not realistically, I don't think. When you look at the conference right now, you have 5 teams with at least 7 wins. And plus you have the Giants, who now have a 2-game lead in the division. I would say right now, from a momentum standpoint, the Redskins actually have a better chance of challenging the Giants for the divisional title than the Cowboys do. The schedule is a little forgiving, but they'll probably beat Philadelphia just because Philadelphia is a train wreck. But those next 3 games, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, they're all 50-50 games, and probably leaning more toward the Cowboys losing those games. So mathematically, yeah, they're still in it, but it's also like saying the Saints are mathematically still in it. They're both 5-6. That's a hard row to hoe at this point in the season.
Well, 5-6 and headed downward as opposed to 5-6 with some hope. That's a whole different deal there,
Yeah. And that's the difference between the Redskins and the Cowboys right now after what happened on Thanksgiving. Redskins fans have some hope. Cowboys fans don't have as much.
Absolutely. When's the last time you can recall an Eagles-Cowboys game that meant less than this game means this weekend?
Wow. I think you'd have to go back to probably 1999 or 2000 when Dave Campo was the head coach, and Andy Reid was just starting to cut his teeth in Philadelphia. He had just gotten Donovan McNabb. McNabb was probably a rookie or a second-year player. That's probably the last time this game meant very little in the division. This game's on Sunday night. I guess NBC just didn't feel like moving it around.
Well, the Cowboys still have the big ratings. I mean, even as bad as they are, they're going to still have a good audience for it, which is astounding to me.
They do. And the way they played the last 2 weeks in the second half, you're assured of at least some kind of a good game for at least one half.
The Eagles you mentioned them being a train wreck. They're going to come into this ball game on Sunday night without Vic, without LaShawn McCoy, without Deshaun Jackson. They cut Babin today. If Dallas loses this ball game, what are the consequences? What happens?
Well, immediately I would say nothing, just because at this late in the season, I can't imagine the Cowboys making any serious changes. But if they were to lose to a team like Philadelphia that's starting a rookie quarterback that's on a 7-game losing streak, that just lost to Carolina on Monday night, I really can't imagine that Jerry Jones wouldn't make major changes within the organization this offseason. I fully believe that at this point, I didn't really believe this a month ago, but I believe that if they finish under 500, I think Jason Garrett's job is in serious jeopardy. I think that also may prompt Jerry Jones to make a drastic step in hiring a new head coach and going with somebody who's more proven, like a Mike Holmgren or Sean Payton. I also think it would prompt him to look at starting to put together a backup plan for Tony Romo once Romo either his contract is up at the end of the year or try to create a backup plan at quarterback where he didn't have one when Troy Aikman retired in 2000. I think a loss to the Eagles provides Jerry the opportunity to make significant changes within the franchise. Whether he does it or not, you never know. But I think that provides him an avenue to do that.
I mean, bottom line is he can bring Mike Holmgren in or he can bring in Sean Payton, but he's still the guy buying the groceries. So what changes?
Well, if you look at the history of Jerry with a strong head coach, and which is to say Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells,
right,
he can live with it for a short period of time before his ego gets in the way, and he's got to be the guy. The record wins and losses with Johnson and Parcells and without them, it's really neck and neck. It's really no different. The difference is this: if you look at the history after Johnson left, the Cowboys' first losing season came 4 years after Johnson left the team.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the history after Parcells. Their first losing season after Parcells left was in year 4 in 2010.
He'd torn down everything had been built up.
So what you're seeing now is you're seeing an erosion of the talent that Bill Parcells put together. They got a little bit of a bump last year, I think, just because of the of having Garrett as the head coach and having all the quote unquote accountability and discipline, yada yada yada, which really has never really happened. But I think you're slipping into Dave Campo territory now, where if you don't do something about it now, if you don't head it off at the pass, you're going to go into a spiral with 2 or 3 years of protracted losing, and then if you're Jerry, you have no choice but to hire a guy like Mike Holmgren or Sean Payton. The fact is, Holmgren's available now. Payton could be available in March. The time would be right if this team finished under 500 to go ahead and try and do something proactive to put this team in a position where it could be winning football games again with more regularity. Remember when Parcells came in? He took a 5-11 team and made it 9-7 and got to the postseason. So it's very possible to turn around in 1 year if you have the right coach.
Yep, and you got the right guy picking the players. I agree with you. Matthew,
Exactly.
good talking to you, man. Again, we enjoy reading all your stuff in Rattle and Hum Sports and all the 9,000 other sites that you write for, including the Title Morning Telegraph. Good talking to you, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Matthew Postins from Rattle and Hum Sports on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.